Hey guys, tonight I want you to imagine something different, something slow, something strange. Imagine you went to sleep in your warm bed, the hum of your fridge in the kitchen, the quiet glow of your phone nearby, and then you woke up. Not in your room, not even in your time, but in the Middle Ages. It's still dark. A cold, bitter wind creeps through a narrow wooden window. The bed you're lying on feels like hay under rough cloth. The walls are stone, damp, uneven, and seem to absorb every sound. There's no glass in the windows, only an open hole covered by a wooden shutter. No electricity, no plumbing, no heater, just the stale smell of soot, hay, and old wood. You sit up, confused, dizzy. Outside, you hear a bell toll once, slow and distant, echoing through the night. Somewhere far off, a rooster crows. Way too early, it seems. You look around. There's a pair of boots by the bed, worn leather, probably made by hand. A small wooden table holds a metal pitcher, half full of water. No mirror, no toothbrush, no light switch, just a candle, barely holding its flame. It takes you a moment to realize you're not dreaming. The night is too cold, the floor too rough beneath your feet. You walk to the door. The wood is thick, uneven, with heavy iron hinges. You push it open. Outside, a dirt path winds between more stone houses, some with straw roofs, others with shingles. No cars, no wires, just the faint sound of hooves on packed earth, someone coughing in the distance, a dog barking without urgency. And then it hits you, you're in the past, way in the past, somewhere around the 11th or 12th century, judging by the architecture and the utter lack of modern life. But how did we get here? To this moment in history? To answer that, we have to go back, way back. Not to the Middle Ages, but even before that, to the fall of the Western Roman Empire. Because what we call the Middle Ages, or the medieval period, didn't just appear from nowhere. It was born from the ashes of something much bigger, much older, much more powerful. In the year 476 CE, the Western Roman Empire officially collapsed. Its last emperor, a teenager named Romulus Augustulus, was deposed by a Germanic chieftain named Odoacer. With that, centuries of Roman order crumbled, leaving behind scattered kingdoms, isolated cities, and a population that no longer remembered the heights of Roman engineering, administration, or culture. But Rome itself didn't disappear overnight. The Eastern Roman Empire, better known today as the Byzantine Empire, survived and even thrived for nearly another 1,000 years. Meanwhile, Western Europe splintered into feudal societies, ruled by lords and protected by knights. Literacy dropped, trade routes fell apart, cities shrank, roads decayed. What you've just woken up in, this cold, unfamiliar world, is the long shadow of a once great empire. And in the next few moments, we'll slowly walk through the ruins of time, step by step, war by war, from kings and plagues to peasants and revolts. And maybe, just maybe, you'll figure out where you are, and how to survive here. The Middle Ages didn't begin with a bang. They crept in slowly, like fog rolling over broken roads and silent temples. When Rome fell in 476 CE, it wasn't just an empire that collapsed. It was a whole way of life. Roman cities had plumbing, libraries, heated baths, and paved streets. Now, much of that knowledge was lost, buried beneath layers of fear, famine, and fire. Imagine living in a world where no one remembers how to build an aqueduct, where the great amphitheaters stand as empty stone shells, haunted by wind and wolves, where coins once stamped with the face of an emperor are now melted down into crude jewelry. The people of early medieval Europe didn't call it the Middle Ages. They called it life, hard, fragile, and short. The roads, once patrolled by Roman legions, are now stalked by bandits or simply swallowed by forests. Latin, once the universal tongue, fragments into dozens of dialects. Even the idea of a centralized government fades away. In its place, lords with castles, peasants with wooden tools, and a church that begins to shape every breath of daily life. If you walk outside your small wooden home, if that's what it is, and listen closely, you might hear Latin prayers from a nearby chapel. But no one speaks Latin anymore in the streets. Not fluently. Not comfortably. The words are hollow echoes from a forgotten age. And yet, life didn't stop. People adapted. They planted crops, raised goats and pigs, fished in rivers. They told stories by candlelight. Children played with carved wooden toys, laughed in muddy fields, and fell asleep to the sound of wolves howling in the distance. Despite the chaos, a rhythm slowly returned. One built around the seasons, the soil, and the church bell. The church, especially, began to rise in power. As kingdoms came and went, monasteries endured. Monks preserved fragments of Roman knowledge, copying ancient texts by hand in cold, stone scriptoriums. Some of the only surviving books from the classical world were saved in these lonely corners of Christendom. Without them, we might never have rediscovered Aristotle, Cicero, or Euclid. Meanwhile, a new order was taking shape, feudalism. Imagine a pyramid of loyalty and fear. At the bottom, peasants or serfs who farm the land. Above them, knights, warriors who swear loyalty to lords. Then come the lords, who control castles, land, and men. And at the very top, a king, often distant and mysterious, whose word carries power but not always reach. You, waking up in this unfamiliar time, would likely find yourself near the bottom. No last name, no ID, no money, and no proof of who you are. That would make you a stranger. And strangers, in this age, are treated with suspicion, or worse. But somewhere beyond the fields and the dirt paths, whispers of larger forces stir. The Frankish kingdoms are rising in the west. The Islamic caliphates are expanding from the south and east. And in the distance, a name is being spoken with awe and fear: Charlemagne. He hasn't arrived in your village yet, but his shadow is coming. And when it does, the Middle Ages will begin to change. Not all at once, but like the slow toll of a distant bell, reshaping the world with each ring. The morning fog lifts slowly over the village. Somewhere beyond the hills, a horse whinnies and a hammer strikes iron. A blacksmith, perhaps. Life here is slow, heavy, like the mud clinging to your boots. But far beyond these quiet roads, something far greater is unfolding. A power strong enough to change the map of Europe. His name is Charles, son of Pepin the Short. But history will remember him as Charlemagne, Charles the Great. He's not a king yet in your time. Not fully. But already, his conquests have begun. One by one, the smaller kingdoms of Western Europe fall under his rule. He speaks Frankish, a language that sounds like broken German mixed with fading Latin. And he commands armies that march with surprising precision for a so-called dark age. What makes Charlemagne different is not just his sword. It's his vision. He believes in order, in unity, and in the strength of Christian faith. He doesn't just want land. He wants to rebuild the West in the image of Rome. And in 800 CE, he takes a step no one has dared in centuries. He is crowned Emperor of the Romans by Pope Leo III in the old city of Rome itself. A bold message to the Byzantine East. A spark in the cold ashes of the past. Back in your village, none of this feels real. You don't hear about emperors. You hear about taxes. About wolves stealing chickens. About rain running crops. Yet slowly, the effects trickle down. Roads are cleared. Monasteries multiply. Latin is taught again, not fluently, but faithfully, in church schools. Charlemagne establishes a court in Aachen, where scholars from across Europe are invited to teach, copy manuscripts, and debate philosophy. This moment, quiet to us now, becomes known as the Carolingian Renaissance, a flicker of light in a time often remembered only for shadows. Still, things are far from peaceful. Charlemagne's wars are brutal. He fights the Saxons for decades, forcing their conversion to Christianity through sword and flame. The Avars, Lombards, and Moors are all drawn into his campaigns. Whole villages are erased. Rebellion brews constantly. And when Charlemagne dies in 814, his empire, though mighty, begins to fracture. His grandsons divide the realm. 3 kingdoms are carved from one: East Francia, West Francia, and Middle Francia, awkward lines on parchment that will, over centuries, become the foundations of Germany, France, and a corridor of contested lands. Meanwhile, new threats emerge from the sea and steppe. The Vikings, longships cutting through river and tide. The Magyars, fast riders from the east. And the Saracens, raiders from across the Mediterranean. As one storm fades, another forms. The people of Europe barely have time to rest before the next wave of chaos arrives. And you, standing in this fragile moment, begin to understand something deeper. The Middle Ages are not static. They are not quiet. They breathe, burn, collapse, and rise again. Your village may feel still, but history is already galloping toward it, faster than anyone can see. The nights grow colder. The wind howls more fiercely now, and you notice that people in the village speak with fear about the coastline. Not about the waves or the storms, but about what sails on them. Longships, silent, fast, and deadly. Word spreads like wildfire even without letters. The Northmen have arrived. They come not with diplomats or priests, but with axes. Vikings, as they will later be called, appear suddenly from the mists around the late 8th century. In 793, they raid Lindisfarne, a peaceful monastery off the coast of Northumbria. The attack is brutal. Monks are slaughtered, sacred books burned, relics taken. It's not just a robbery. It's a message. The sea no longer protects. By the 9th century, Viking raids stretch from Ireland to Spain. Paris is attacked, not once, but multiple times. Entire towns vanish, their names erased, replaced by ash and bones. The Carolingian kings try to respond, but the empire has already begun to crack. Defenses are too slow. The longships are too fast. Fortresses are built, rivers watched. Yet the Norsemen still come, not just to raid, but to stay. They begin to settle. In England, they carve out the Danelaw, their own territory, their own laws. In France, a Viking chieftain named Rollo is granted land in the north, which will eventually become Normandy, the land of the Northmen. The logic is simple. Better to give them land than to fight endless war. But that decision will echo across centuries in ways no one then could imagine. And they're not the only ones reshaping the map. From the east, the Magyars sweep into Central Europe, fierce, fast horsemen who strike like lightning. Their raids reach as far as modern-day France and Italy. From the south, Saracen pirates attack coastal towns, even taking parts of Sicily. Europe becomes a battlefield of constant motion. Feudalism tightens. Castles multiply. Every lord builds higher walls, deeper moats, and trains more knights. You notice it in your village too. The manor grows taller. Guards begin patrolling. Travel becomes dangerous, and anyone without a banner or letter of protection risks being hanged as a spy or worse. Trust is rare, safety rarer. But amidst the chaos, ideas continue to move. Monks still copy texts. Artisans craft stained glass. Bells ring in rhythm with the days. And the church grows bolder. By the 10th century, the Pope begins to act not just as a spiritual leader, but as a political force, choosing kings, blessing armies, and influencing the fates of kingdoms from behind the walls of Rome. Somehow, through fire and fear, Europe endures. And now, as the first millennium draws to a close, a strange anxiety grips the continent. Whispers spread that the year 1000 will bring the end of the world, the final judgment. People fast. Priests preach of reckoning. Fields are left unplanted, debts forgiven, sins confessed. But the sun still rises. The bells still toll. And instead of the end of the world, something very different begins. A new kind of war. One with a cross, a cause, and a direction, east. The year is 1095. You're older now, not in years, but in understanding. You've seen kings fall and warlords rise. You've seen the land split, stitched, and split again. But now something different stirs in the hearts of men. It doesn't begin in your village. It begins far to the south, in the city of Clermont, where a pope raises his voice not in prayer, but in rally. Urban II stands before a crowd and calls for war. Not for territory, not for revenge, but for God. He speaks of Jerusalem, the holy city, sacred to Christians, Muslims, and Jews alike, now under the control of Muslim rulers. He claims pilgrims are attacked, churches are defiled, and he offers something no king can, eternal salvation in exchange for bloodshed. The First Crusade has begun. At first, it feels like a rumor, but then you see it. Men packing what little they own, blacksmiths shaping crude crosses from iron, children marching behind carts, even peasants, untrained, poor, barefoot. Join what becomes known as the People's Crusade. Many don't make it past Hungary. Some are killed by fellow Christians. Others starve before ever seeing a battlefield. But the real armies follow close behind. Knights, nobles, lords, armored and mounted, head east. Through Byzantine lands, over mountains, across deserts. Their goal, Jerusalem. Their motivation, complex. Some want land, some want glory, some believe, others simply follow the tide. In 1099, after a brutal siege, they reach the holy city. What follows is not peace, it's fire. The Crusaders breach the walls and unleash days of slaughter. Streets run red. No one is spared, not even fellow Christians from the east. It is victory, but soaked in shadow. And yet, in the West, it's celebrated as divine triumph. Songs are written, relics are paraded, new states are carved in the Levant, Crusader kingdoms ruled by European lords who barely speak the local tongues. But this moment is only the beginning. Over the next 2 centuries, wave after wave of crusades will follow. Some succeed, most fail, and the consequences ripple across continents. Trade opens. Ideas move. Arabic science, medicine, and philosophy begin to trickle into European thought. Algebra, optics, ancient Greek texts once lost are now rediscovered through Arabic translations. The West, hungry for knowledge, begins to wake up, but so do its contradictions. In the name of God, Europe has learned to kill with conviction. Crusades are no longer just fought abroad. They begin to happen at home. Heretics are hunted. Jews are expelled or massacred. Pagans in the Baltic are forced into baptism by the sword. And the church, once a shelter, now becomes a judge. In your village, a new chapel rises. Larger, stone-built, with pointed arches and stained glass windows. You hear sermons not just of salvation, but of sin, punishment, and obedience. A wrong word can be fatal. A wrong belief can end your family. You survived plague and hunger, raiders and taxes. But now, a new danger grows, invisible, quiet, wrapped in incense and holy robes. And the world you woke up in begins to shift once more. Not through war or conquest, but through fear. The church bell rings louder now, not just to mark the hours, but to summon, to warn, to accuse. It no longer feels like a symbol of peace. It feels like a signal. In the distance, whispers pass between neighbors. A merchant's wife didn't cross herself properly. A farmer's son said something strange about the saints. A widow reads at night by candlelight, and no one taught her to read. In the 12th and 13th centuries, the church transforms. Its power is no longer just spiritual. It is administrative, legal, financial. Popes now excommunicate kings. Bishops command armies. And for those who question authority, there is now something new, something cold, precise, and terrifying: the Inquisition. At first, it begins in the south of France, aimed at the Cathars, a Christian sect deemed heretical for their dualist beliefs. But it soon spreads. Across Italy, Spain, Germany, special courts are formed, backed by both church and crown. Accusation is enough to trigger arrest. Confession is expected. Torture is permitted. Silence is dangerous. You see changes in your village. Scrolls nailed to chapel doors. Lists of forbidden texts. Priests who no longer preach, but interrogate. People speak in lowered voices. And worst of all, some begin to disappear. Yet even under the weight of this control, minds continue to move. Universities appear in Bologna, Paris, Oxford, places where young men are trained not just in prayer, but in rhetoric, law, medicine, and philosophy. It's here that logic is sharpened, where Aristotle returns through Latin translations, where reason is once again placed beside faith. And then, something unexpected. A monk in Germany begins building with sound and glass. An engineer in Spain studies light and motion. And in Italy, a man named Thomas Aquinas writes volumes trying to bridge belief and thought, arguing that reason and God do not contradict, that the world can be studied and still remain sacred. Gothic cathedrals rise now, not just to impress, but to teach. Their walls become books. Their windows, sermons. They reach toward heaven, but their foundations are made of geometry. Inside, choirs echo in harmony so precise, they feel like architecture themselves. But for all the learning and building, fear remains close. Not fear of war, or even kings. Fear of the unseen, of damnation, demons, and the devil's influence on earth. Magic is forbidden. Witchcraft is whispered about. Natural disasters are seen as punishment. Even a failed harvest might mean someone, somewhere, is guilty. And while the church rules the soul, kings begin to consolidate rule over land. Castles become stone fortresses. Borders are drawn with iron. Taxes become law. And yet, despite all this structure, one truth cannot be ignored. Most people are still peasants, still barefoot, still hungry. And far to the east, a quiet terror gathers like a thundercloud over the steppe. It doesn't speak Latin. It doesn't care about Christ, or popes, or knights. It comes not on foot, but on horseback. Swift, ruthless, unstoppable. It has a name, but no one here has heard it yet. Not yet. The wind changes. First, it's just a rumor. A merchant from the east who arrives days later than expected, his caravan smaller, his voice lowered. Then it's a whisper among monks. Entire cities burned, fortresses flattened, no survivors. The name is strange, foreign, hard to pronounce. But the fear is unmistakable. The Mongols have come. Out on the vast grasslands of the Asian steppe, a boy named Temujin was born in hardship, orphaned, hunted, betrayed. But he survived. And not just survived, he conquered. Tribe by tribe, he united the fractious nomads under a single banner. By 1206, They called him Genghis Khan, universal ruler. And under his command, the Mongols began to move west like a storm with no edges. They are not like any army Europe has seen. They don't march in rows. They don't fight for kings or popes. They ride, fast, light, silent, and they communicate with signals that seem like magic. Their arrows pierce armor. Their tactics are unfamiliar. Their cruelty is calculated. They leave no resistance standing. By the 1240s, the Mongols are in Eastern Europe. They destroy Kiev. They crush Polish knights and Hungarian armies. Entire villages vanish in a single night. The Mongols don't stay long in the west, but their message is clear. No one is safe. No city too strong. No wall too high. Back in your village, the fear reaches in without maps. No one here can point to Mongolia. But the word Tatars is used like a curse. And long after the Mongols vanish over the horizon, their memory remains. They show the world that empires can still rise from nothing. That horsemen with no kings, no castles, no saints, can shake the earth itself. But where the Mongols leave, something else arrives. With them, unintentionally, they carry a darker legacy. Rats and fleas, traveling in the quiet folds of sacks and blankets, moving from trade caravans to city docks. And within those fleas, something invisible, unimaginable. A plague. The Black Death, as it will later be called, begins in the 1340s. No one knows exactly where, but once it starts, it doesn't stop. It travels faster than armies. It kills faster than swords. From the ports of Italy to the villages of France, to the valleys of the Rhine, it spreads with terrifying speed. Fever, boils, bleeding, death within days, sometimes hours. You see it in your village. First one, then 3, then 20. Entire households sealed. Priests burying bodies until they too collapse. No funerals. No prayers. Just silence. Dogs roam free. Bells toll without pattern. Some believe it's the end of days. Others say it's a punishment from God. A few blame strangers, Jews, travelers, women who speak to themselves. Violence erupts. Pogroms spread. By the time the wave passes, up to half of Europe's population is gone. Fields are empty. Roads overgrown. The world becomes quieter, but not peaceful. Just hollow. And yet, in the stillness, something begins to shift. Labor is now rare. Peasants realize their value. Some demand wages. Others walk away from their lords. The old order begins to crack. Slowly, unevenly. The plague didn't just take lives. It took control. And in that space, a new idea is stirring. Faint, fragile, still unnamed, but dangerous. Not a king, not a sword, but thought. The silence after the plague isn't empty. It's waiting. Waiting for something to fill the void left behind. Not just in the fields and homes, but in the mind. For centuries, life in Europe had followed narrow paths. The church spoke. The people obeyed. The land ruled. The people worked. But now, something subtle shifts. A peasant walks away from the manor and doesn't return. A scribe copies a text and asks why it says what it says. A merchant's son reads not just the Bible, but Aristotle. The world, long viewed as a flat circle of sin and salvation, begins to stretch. And in the cities, those that survived, a new rhythm begins. Especially in the south. Florence. It is here, among its narrow streets, its merchant families, and its artists, that a quiet revolution begins. Not with armies or decrees, but with pencils, pigment, parchment. They don't call it a revolution. They call it a renascita, a rebirth. And later, we will call it the Renaissance. It doesn't happen overnight. And not everyone notices. But you might. You might wander into a workshop where an old man sketches human muscles with obsessive care. You might find a young boy reading Plato in Greek by candlelight. You might overhear names: Petrarch, Giotto, Boccaccio, names that will outlive kings. They aren't just making art. They're asking questions. What is beauty? What is man? What is the purpose of knowledge? These are dangerous thoughts in an age still ruled by monarchs and monasteries. But in the wake of death, there is a thirst for meaning that sermons alone cannot satisfy. The printing press arrives in the mid-15th century. Gutenberg, a German goldsmith, creates a machine that can replicate books faster than any monk's hand. Before, a Bible might take a year to copy. Now, dozens can be made in weeks. And not just Bibles, treatises, poems, manuals, maps. Knowledge, once locked behind stone walls, begins to spill into the streets. You feel it even in your village. A peddler offers not only knives and spices, but pamphlets. A priest quotes from newly printed sermons. A neighbor's son leaves for the city, not to fight, but to study. The church, still powerful, feels the ground shifting. Some welcome the change. Others resist. But the questions keep multiplying. How is the world truly made? What lies beyond the stars? Must authority always come from tradition? And in the middle of it all, artists begin to reshape how humans see themselves. No longer just sinners crawling towards salvation, but thinkers, builders, explorers, beings made in the image of something divine, and yet reaching higher on their own terms. Leonardo da Vinci sketches flying machines. Michelangelo carves gods from stone. In their work, man is both fragile and immense. But this renaissance is not evenly spread. In the north, wars rage. In the east, empires stir. And across the sea, that vast unknown, rumors begin to grow. That there are lands no map has drawn. That somewhere beyond the horizon, there are riches and wonders untouched by Rome or Christ. And someone, perhaps right now, is building a ship, not for war, not for pilgrimage, but for something far stranger: discovery. For most of human memory, the edge of the known world was the sea, a vast, endless curtain of blue that marked the boundary between the possible and the forbidden. Sail too far, and you might fall into the void. Or so they said. But now, those old fears are being tested, not by kings, not by priests, but by sailors. In Portugal, caravels bob gently in harbors. Sleek, fast, wind-hungry ships built not for war, but for range. Prince Henry, later called the Navigator, invests in maps, compasses, and men willing to risk everything for the unseen. The Portuguese begin creeping down the west coast of Africa, mapping each curve, each port, each wind. Then in 1492, the world shifts. You know his name, Christopher Columbus. But in this moment, he's simply a Genoese sailor with bold promises and borrowed ships. He believes the world is round, and that by sailing west, he can reach the riches of the east: spices, silk, gold. The kings of Portugal say no. But Spain, newly united under Ferdinand and Isabella, says yes. Columbus sets sail. And after weeks of endless water and breaking masts, he sees land. Not China. Not India. Something else. He doesn't know it yet, but he's just redrawn the world. The news spreads slowly, like a tide creeping over unfamiliar sand. There are new lands, new peoples, new resources. Gold is found, sugar, timber, lives. And soon, a new kind of empire begins to take shape, one built not on old borders, but on ocean wind and colonial ambition. Ships become weapons. Maps become prizes. Entire kingdoms compete to carve their names into places they'd never seen. Portugal claims Brazil, Spain devours the Aztec and Inca empires with steel, horses, and disease. England, France, the Dutch, they arrive late but hungry. And in their wake, the old world changes. In your village, you begin to hear strange words: tobacco, cacao canoe. A man returns from the coast with dark beans that can be ground into a bitter drink. Another brings a story about natives covered in gold dust. Churches preach about souls to be saved across oceans. Merchants sell sugar harvested by hands that will never see freedom, because exploration is never clean. With discovery comes exploitation. With trade comes slavery. Millions of Africans are stolen, shackled, and shipped across the Atlantic. Whole cultures vanish. Others resist, adapt, survive in fragments. Back home, the economy shifts. Gold pours into Europe, inflating prices, funding wars, feeding art. Cities boom. Markets swell. A new class rises: merchants, bankers, men of letters. Wealth begins to loosen the grip of nobility. And yet, in the middle of it all, the church finds itself under siege, not from armies, but from inside. A monk in Germany, troubled by corruption and indulgences, writes 95 theses and nails them to a church door in Wittenberg. His name is Martin Luther. He doesn't want revolution, but that's exactly what he starts. The Reformation begins, and in its fire, Europe splits, not just politically, but spiritually. Faith is no longer singular, no longer unquestioned. The world has grown wider, and more uncertain than ever. The village has changed. The chapel still stands, but now there are arguments in the square. A traveling preacher says the Pope is corrupt. A local priest warns that rebellion leads to hell. Two neighbors stop speaking after one begins reading a Bible not written in Latin. And you feel it, not just around you, but under your feet. The ground is shifting again. The Reformation, sparked by Luther in 1517, is no longer a single event. It is a fracture, a crack running through the very bones of Europe. What begins as protest soon becomes fire. Luther's words are printed, repeated, passed from town to town. People who never held a book now hold dangerous ideas about faith, salvation, authority. Other voices join in. Ulrich Zwingli in Switzerland, John Calvin in Geneva. They reject the old rituals. They strip altars bare. They burn relics. Churches once echoing with incense and chant now ring with plain sermons in local tongues. Simpler, sharper, divisive. The Catholic Church doesn't yield. It counters with force and reform of its own. The Council of Trent is summoned. The Jesuits rise, fiercely educated, disciplined, loyal to Rome. And so Europe becomes a battlefield of belief, not just between nations, but within them. The 16th century bleeds with holy war. In Germany, princes choose sides, Protestant or Catholic, and their subjects must follow. In France, mobs clash in the streets, culminating in the St. Bartholomew's Day massacre, where thousands of Huguenots, French Protestants, are killed overnight. In England, kings and queens rewrite the religion of the realm with every succession. One monarch burns heretics, the next restores them, and the people, caught between pulpits and gallows, learn to speak carefully, or not at all. You hear new words now: heresy, recant, excommunication, tolerance. But they rarely mean peace. In your village, a man is arrested for owning a banned book. A neighbor hides pages in a loaf of bread. Children are taught to recite prayers depending on which flag flies above the Lord's manna that week. Faith, once a private comfort, becomes a public weapon. And yet, from this chaos, something else emerges, quietly, steadily. Questions, not about salvation, but about structure. If the church can be wrong, what else might be? If princes can break from Rome, Why not from tradition entirely? A scientist points a telescope at the moon and sees mountains, not divine perfection, but rock. Another studies blood flow and finds that the heart pumps, not heats. A thinker in France writes, "I think, therefore I am." Reason begins to speak, not loudly, not yet, but in libraries and universities, in notebooks and letters, a new kind of curiosity takes root, one that doesn't ask what God wills, but how the world works. And while kings still fight, and preachers still thunder, a quieter war begins, for truth, for observation, for method. Soon, this war will shake more than churches. It will challenge the stars. The night sky has always been a tapestry of wonder and mystery. For centuries, people saw stars as gods, as angels, as signs of fate. But now, something changes. The telescope is born. In 1609, a man named Galileo Galilei turns his handmade instrument toward the heavens. What he sees shatters centuries of belief. The moon is not a perfect sphere, but scarred with mountains and craters. Jupiter, once a distant point of light, reveals moons orbiting it, tiny worlds dancing around a giant. The sun, too, bears spots, imperfections that challenge its divine perfection. Galileo writes. He speaks. He argues. Yet the church, powerful and wary, sees danger. How can these findings fit with Scripture? The heavens, once the domain of God alone, are now a place of physical reality, of rocks, motion, and laws. Meanwhile, across Europe, others follow this new path. Johannes Kepler deciphers the elliptical orbits of planets, replacing old circular dogma. René Descartes formulates a new method, questioning everything, doubting all, until only reason remains. Isaac Newton, later on, will write laws that explain gravity, motion, and light, as if the universe were a clockwork machine, precise and predictable. These discoveries don't come without cost. Galileo faces the Inquisition. Books are banned. Scholars forced into silence or exile. Yet the ideas persist, passed in whispered letters and hidden manuscripts. You, living in this turbulent time, sense the tension. The old world resists the new. Authority fights reason. Faith battles evidence. And the simple act of looking upward becomes an act of rebellion. But it's not just the heavens that change. On Earth, the scientific method begins to transform how people see everything, from medicine to physics, from anatomy to chemistry. Experiments replace guesswork. Observation replaces superstition. The world grows bigger, more complex, yet also more understandable. No longer is knowledge a secret of monks or kings. It belongs to anyone curious enough to seek it. Books multiply, universities expand, salons buzz with debate. And yet, amidst all this enlightenment, the world remains volatile. Monarchs continue their rivalries. Religious wars still scar the land. New empires rise across oceans, fueled by greed and ambition. The age of discovery leads to colonization, and with it, new questions of morality and power. Slavery, conquest, and cultural destruction shadow the glittering achievements of science and art. And here you are, a witness to it all. A traveler through time, caught between old worlds and new, between darkness and light, between faith and reason. As you lie down tonight, beneath stars Galileo mapped centuries ago, you might wonder, what comes next? What dawn awaits humanity on the horizon? The answer is waiting. Quietly, the world begins to hum with ideas. The steam of industry hasn't yet powered machines, but the engines of thought roar louder than ever. It is the 18th century, the age of enlightenment, a time when philosophers, scientists, and writers gather not in courts or churches, but in salons, coffee houses, and printed pages. You hear names like Voltaire, Rousseau, and Locke. They challenge the old orders, kings, aristocrats, even the church, questioning divine rights, hierarchies, and censorship. Reason becomes the new deity, and skepticism its prayer. No longer content to accept tradition, thinkers ask, what is liberty? What is equality? What is justice? They argue that governments derive power not from God but from the people they govern. They speak of rights. Natural, universal, inalienable. They envision societies based on laws, not birthrights. The encyclopedia, edited by Diderot and D'Alembert, spreads knowledge to the masses, from agriculture to astronomy, from philosophy to physics. It is a symbol of progress, a manifesto that knowledge can and should be accessible to all. Yet, with enlightenment comes unrest. The rigid structures that held monarchies and churches in place begin to crack. Old privileges are questioned. The people hunger for freedom, for representation, for a voice. And the world trembles on the edge of revolution. In 1776, across the Atlantic, a group of colonies declares independence. The United States of America. They create a constitution, a Bill of Rights, ideas of democracy and separation of powers. Their revolution becomes a beacon, both inspiring and terrifying monarchs worldwide. Then comes 1789, the French Revolution, the storming of the Bastille, the fall of kings, the guillotine's blade falling relentlessly. Liberty, equality, fraternity become cries of hope and horror. The old regime falls, but chaos rises. War spreads across Europe. The world changes faster than anyone can follow. Your village, though distant from the capitals, feels the shockwaves. Taxes rise. Soldiers march. Loyalties are tested. People wonder what the future holds. Will the new ideas bring peace or destruction? Science marches on. Electricity, chemistry, and medicine make leaps. Steam engines roar to life. Factories rise. Cities swell with workers. Life accelerates. The rhythms of fields give way to the pulse of machines and markets. But progress isn't without price. Inequality grows. Laborers toil in dark, dangerous places. Colonial empires expand, exploiting lands and peoples. The ideals of freedom often exclude women, indigenous people, slaves. And yet, the spark of hope endures. Movements for abolition, suffrage, and education emerge. Ideas about human rights begin to take root worldwide. You stand at the crossroads of centuries. From the fall of Rome, through plagues and crusades, to revolutions and reason, humanity has wandered far. But the journey is not over. The dawn of the modern age is just beginning. The air smells of smoke and oil. The once quiet village is now shadowed by towering chimneys, their black plumes blotting out the sky. It is the 19th century, the age of industry, a time when humanity begins to reshape not only ideas, but the very earth beneath its feet. Steam engines roar to life, powering factories that churn out cloth, steel, and machines faster than ever before. Railroads stretch like veins across continents, connecting cities and people in ways unimaginable a century earlier. The world shrinks as speed increases, but progress is double-edged. Men, women, and even children labor for endless hours in dark, crowded factories. Their bodies wear down faster than the machines they tend. Cities swell, but so do poverty and disease. Overcrowded slums rise alongside grand boulevards. Inventions pile upon inventions. The telegraph shrieks messages across wires. Photography freezes moments in time. The light bulb chases away darkness. Medicine advances, vaccines, antiseptics, saving lives once lost to ignorance. Yet, with change comes conflict. Old monarchies tremble under the weight of revolutions and nationalism. Ideas of democracy clash with empires clinging to power. The American Civil War rips a nation apart over slavery, testing ideals of freedom and union. Colonial empires expand further, carving Africa and Asia into territories ruled by distant powers. Indigenous cultures are suppressed, resources exploited, lives uprooted. The world grows wealthier, but unequally. In the midst of this upheaval, new philosophies emerge. Socialism and communism promise equality through revolution. Feminism demands rights for women long denied. Science challenges religion more openly, with Darwin's theory of evolution stirring controversy and wonder alike. The 19th century is a crucible of contradictions, innovation and oppression, hope and despair, empire and revolution. It is a century where the seeds of the modern world are planted in blood and smoke. You watch the horizon, sensing the tremors of a world on the brink. The machines keep running, the cities keep growing, and the people, restless, dreaming, push forward into a future no one can fully imagine. And as the century closes, a question lingers. Will humanity harness this power for creation or destruction? The dawn of the 20th century breaks with hope and turmoil tangled like storm clouds. The machines that once promised progress now hum with a darker power. Guns, tanks, engines of war unlike any before. The peaceful rhythms of village life have become the thunderous cadence of empires clashing. Nations stand on edge, alliances weaving a fragile web that will soon snap. Imperial ambitions collide in far-flung corners of the globe. Africa, Asia, the Pacific, where distant lands are pawns in the great game of power. Colonies burn with unrest, yet the metropoles march to war with unwavering resolve. In 1914, a spark ignites in Sarajevo, an assassination that sends shockwaves across Europe. The First World War erupts, plunging millions into muddy trenches, endless artillery barrages, and the horrors of chemical weapons. Soldiers die by the millions, lives shattered under barbed wire and shellfire. The world watches, helpless, as innocence is slaughtered. Back home, the war changes everything. Women enter factories, filling roles once denied. Societies strain under rationing, propaganda, and loss. Governments grow stronger, surveilling their people in the name of security. And when the guns finally fall silent in 1918, the peace is uneasy, like the fragile ice before a storm. The Treaty of Versailles attempts to redraw borders and punish the defeated, but resentment festers. New nations are carved from old empires. Poland reborn, Czechoslovakia created, but the wounds remain raw. Economic turmoil and political extremism surge, feeding the rise of dangerous ideologies. The roaring 1920s bring jazz, flappers, and technological marvels. Cars, radios, airplanes, that reshape daily life. But beneath the glitter lies desperation. The Great Depression crashes economies, leaving millions unemployed and desperate. In the shadows, extremist parties gain strength promising revival, revenge, and renewal. By the 1930s, the world edges toward another abyss. Fascism rises in Italy under Mussolini, while Adolf Hitler seizes power in Germany, preaching hatred and conquest. Across the seas, Japan militarizes aggressively, seeking empire and resources. The fragile peace shatters in 1939. World War II consumes the globe in a conflict more brutal than any before. Cities burn. Entire populations suffer genocide, displacement, and terror. The Holocaust stands as a monument to humanity's darkest depths. Yet, amid horror, moments of courage and resistance shine. Ordinary people risk everything for hope, for justice. The war ends in 1945 with devastation and a new world order. The United Nations is born, promising peace. But a Cold War soon divides the planet into two opposing spheres, each armed with nuclear power capable of obliterating civilization. In your time-traveling mind, All these centuries compress into a dizzying flow, from Rome's ruins to modern skyscrapers, from horse-drawn carts to jet engines, from plagues to vaccines, from feudal lords to global superpowers. History is not a straight path. It is a winding road marked by progress and setbacks, creation and destruction, light and shadow. And as you lie back now, in a world lit by electricity and connected by invisible waves, the question lingers. What will you do with the history you have witnessed? The world has never been smaller. Airplanes crisscross skies, satellites circle the Earth, and messages travel instantly across continents. The 20th century's technological leaps have shrunk distances and opened new frontiers, from the depths of the oceans to the vastness of space. Humans have walked on the moon and sent probes beyond the solar system. Yet, beneath the marvel lies complexity. The Cold War's shadow looms large, splitting the globe into ideological camps: capitalism and communism, democracy and dictatorship. Proxy wars rage from Korea to Vietnam to Afghanistan. The threat of nuclear annihilation hovers like a dark cloud. Civil rights movements rise, challenging centuries of injustice and inequality. Women fight for the vote, racial minorities demand equality, and marginalized communities seek recognition. The world grows louder with voices once silenced. Globalization accelerates. Economies intertwine. Cultures blend and clash. The internet revolutionizes information, connecting billions, but also spreading misinformation, division, and unrest. New pandemics remind humanity of its vulnerabilities. Climate change emerges as the defining challenge of this century. The planet's delicate balance shifts under human influence, bringing storms, droughts, and rising seas. Nations debate, protests ignite, yet solutions remain elusive. Meanwhile, science pushes boundaries: gene editing, artificial intelligence, quantum computing. Ethical dilemmas surface. What does it mean to be human? How far can we go? The pace is dizzying, the stakes high. Old conflicts persist even as new alliances form. Technology empowers and threatens. Hope battles fear. In your mind's eye, you see centuries condensed into moments. Plagues to vaccines, empires to nations, superstition to science. The thread that binds them is human resilience, curiosity, courage, and the unending quest for meaning. Now, as you prepare to return to your own time, the question that echoes through history is clear. What story will you choose to write next? The past centuries have shown us that progress is never guaranteed. Every invention, every idea, every leap forward carries with it the seeds of risk and reward. You stand at the crossroads of possibility, the moment where what comes next depends not just on chance, but on choice. The world now hums with technologies once dreamed only in fiction. Artificial intelligence grows smarter, capable of learning, creating, even deciding. Machines assist in medicine, explore distant planets, and connect minds across oceans. Yet, with this power comes a question: who controls it? How do we ensure it serves all, not just a few? Climate change challenges every assumption about growth and consumption. The planet's fragile ecosystems warn of imbalance, urging humanity to reconsider its relationship with nature. Will we listen? Will we change course before it's too late? Social divides, once regional, now stretch globally. Wealth, opportunity, access. Movements rise to bridge gaps, demanding justice not only in law but in everyday life. The fight for equality continues, reminding us that history is alive, unfinished. In your journey through time, you have witnessed empires rise and fall, faiths unite and divide, ideas illuminate and darken the path. But one constant remains: the human spirit's resilience, its boundless curiosity, its capacity to hope. As you prepare to awaken in your own world, remember this: history is not merely a story told. It is a call, a challenge to understand, to learn, to act. Will you be a bystander or a builder? A keeper of wisdom or a bearer of change? The future waits, silent, vast, and filled with promise. And it begins with you. Imagine the world as a vast web, each thread a life, a story, a choice. Over centuries, these threads have intertwined, tugged, and sometimes snapped. Yet the web endures, growing ever more complex, more fragile, more vital. In the earliest times, people lived in small tribes, bound by kin and survival. Their worlds were small but intense, every dawn a battle, every night a prayer. Then came kingdoms, empires, and religions that reached beyond families and villages, forging identities, alliances, and conflicts on scales unimaginable. The Renaissance sparked a revolution of thought, revealing that knowledge could illuminate the shadows, that humans were not mere subjects but seekers, creators, dreamers. This awakening continued through revolutions that toppled monarchs and challenged divine rule, placing power in the hands of the people, or at least attempting to. The Industrial Revolution transformed not just economies, but the very fabric of daily life. Cities swelled, machines roared, and humanity's footprint expanded beyond anything before. Yet, this growth came with costs: pollution, inequality, exploitation. The world grew smaller, yet many were left behind. The 20th century bore witness to the extremes of human nature: unprecedented innovation alongside devastating wars, soaring hopes intertwined with dark tragedies. Empires crumbled, nations rose, and ideas of freedom, justice, and human rights became rallying cries that still echo. Now, in your time, the web has spread across continents and oceans, weaving together billions through technology, culture, commerce, and ideas. Social media connects distant strangers, artificial intelligence learns from collective knowledge, and science pushes boundaries at a dizzying pace. Yet this interconnectedness brings challenges. Misinformation spreads as quickly as facts. Divisions harden despite closeness. Privacy erodes even as transparency is demanded. Climate change reminds that every thread affects the whole. Pollution in one place harms the air everywhere. Deforestation threatens global balance. Your journey through time reveals this web not as static, but as alive, fragile, resilient, capable of tearing and healing. Each individual thread matters. Each decision reverberates. As you awaken in your own time, consider your place in this web. How will you weave your thread? With kindness or cruelty? With wisdom or ignorance? With courage or fear? History is not only what happened, it is what you carry forward. The web awaits your touch. History is a river, flowing ever onward, sometimes rushing, sometimes still, but never ceasing. You have journeyed through its currents, witnessing civilizations rise and fall, ideas clash and merge, and humanity constantly reshaping itself. Now, you stand at a turning point unlike any before. The 21st century dawns with promise and peril intertwined. Technology accelerates at a staggering pace. Smartphones connect billions. Artificial intelligence learns and creates. Renewable energy challenges old fuels. Science unlocks secrets of the genome, quantum physics, and the cosmos. Humans send probes to Mars, dreaming of new homes beyond Earth. Yet, with these wonders come profound questions and risks. Climate change, once a distant warning, becomes an urgent crisis. Oceans rise, forests burn, species vanish. The planet's fragile balance teeters as humanity's footprint expands beyond sustainable limits. Entire communities face displacement, starvation, conflict. Social structures strain under the weight of inequality. While some enjoy unprecedented wealth and access, others remain trapped in poverty, denied basic rights and opportunities. Migration surges as people flee war, famine, and environmental disaster. Borders tighten, walls rise, divisions deepen. Information floods the world, but truth becomes contested. Misinformation spreads like wildfire, fueling distrust, polarization, and violence. The very tools designed to connect humanity sometimes seem to tear it apart. Privacy fades as surveillance grows. Freedom wrestles with control. In this swirling chaos, new movements rise, calling for justice, climate action, peace, and equity. Young voices, once unheard, now echo across continents. Activists harness technology to organize, educate, and inspire. Science and spirituality seek common ground, reminding that survival depends on harmony with nature and each other. The future is uncertain, fragile yet filled with potential. Will humanity choose cooperation over conflict? Wisdom over ignorance? Compassion over indifference? The choices are yours and ours, collective and personal. As you awaken from this journey, remember, history is not a fixed script, but a living story, constantly rewritten by those who dare to act. You have seen the struggles and triumphs of the past. Now, it is time to write the next chapter. The river flows on, carrying you forward. What will you leave in its wake? As the river of history carries you onward, the weight of centuries presses lightly on your shoulders, a reminder that the future is not set in stone. It is shaped by countless choices, small and vast, that ripple through time like waves across water. You have seen empires rise and fall, ideas ignite revolutions, and humanity constantly wrestle with its own nature. Now, standing at the edge of the present, the most important question remains: what comes next? The world you awaken to is breathtakingly complex. Technology connects billions in ways once unimaginable, through screens, satellites, and networks woven invisibly around the globe. Knowledge is vast and accessible, but so is noise and confusion. Truth competes with falsehood, empathy battles apathy. The tools meant to unite can also divide. Climate change, still urgent and escalating, forces humanity to reckon with the consequences of centuries of choices made without foresight or care. But even amidst uncertainty, hope persists. Movements grow louder, united in the conviction that change is possible. Young leaders emerge, demanding justice for the marginalized, accountability for the powerful, and healing for a wounded planet. Scientists innovate tirelessly, unlocking new paths toward sustainability and resilience. Communities rediscover ancient wisdom, blending it with modern insight to restore balance between people and nature. History has taught that progress is neither linear nor guaranteed. It has come wrapped in conflict and cooperation, destruction and creation. The lessons of the past whisper that humanity's greatest strength lies in its ability to learn, adapt, and dream. You hold a thread in the vast web of human existence. Your actions, your voice, your choices matter. Whether you realize it or not, you are part of this unfolding story, a co-author of the next chapter. Will you act with courage when faced with injustice? Will you embrace curiosity over fear? Will you nurture connection instead of division? The answers lie within you. As you close your eyes tonight, remember the journeys you've taken, through empires and plagues, revolutions and renaissances, wars and peace. They are not mere stories, but mirrors reflecting your own capacity to influence the world. The future is not something to fear, but a canvas waiting for your brush. History flows on, but its direction depends on those willing to steer. What will your story be? Through the endless flow of history, one truth remains constant. Every generation carries the weight of responsibility for what it inherits and what it leaves behind. You have traveled through centuries of triumph and tragedy, witnessed the heights of human achievement and the depths of suffering. Now, standing at the crossroads of the present, the burden and the gift of choice rests firmly in your hands. The world around you is a mosaic of challenges and opportunities. Environmental crises demand urgent action. Inequalities and injustices stir unrest and demand redress. Technology offers tools of unimaginable power, yet also tests the limits of ethics and control. The paths forward are many, but none are certain. Yet within this complexity lies the essence of what it means to be human, the ability to reflect, to question, to choose differently. History teaches that progress is never guaranteed. It requires vigilance, courage, and empathy. It is forged in the decisions of individuals and communities who dare to imagine a better world and work tirelessly to bring it to life. Consider the power of small actions, words spoken, kindness extended, truths spoken. They ripple outward, touching lives and inspiring change. Consider the strength of collective effort, when diverse voices unite toward common goals. Movements for justice, sustainability, and peace remind us that change is possible even in the darkest times. But responsibility also means confronting uncomfortable truths. It means recognizing the ways we participate in systems of harm, even unintentionally. It means facing fear and resistance without turning away. It means holding space for those who have been silenced and marginalized. As you awaken from this journey, remember that history is not merely a record of the past, but a living story shaped by those who inhabit the present. You are part of this unfolding narrative. Your choices, your voice, your actions matter. The river of time flows forward, relentless and powerful. What you do now will shape the currents yet to come. Will you carry the weight with courage? With wisdom? With hope? The future awaits your answer. History is not confined to dusty books or fading memories. It lives and breathes in the echoes of actions taken long ago, resonating in the choices we face today. The past whispers lessons, warnings, and hopes, if only we are willing to listen. You have witnessed the rise of empires that built magnificent cities and collapsed under their own weight. You have seen revolutions that toppled tyrants yet unleashed chaos. You have walked alongside thinkers who dared to question everything, igniting fires of knowledge that still burn. But these echoes are not mere reflections. They are calls to action, bridges connecting generations. They remind us that the struggles for freedom, justice, and dignity are ongoing, not confined to any single era. In your own time, these echoes manifest in protests on the streets, in debates over rights and responsibilities, in the relentless push for progress tempered by caution. The faces of those who marched centuries ago for liberty look familiar in the eyes of today's activists. The dreams of equality and peace remain unfinished, their fulfillment resting on shoulders both young and old. The choices you make, how you treat others, how you engage with your community, how you steward the earth, become part of this symphony of echoes. Your voice, added to the chorus, can amplify hope or deepen despair. Remember, too, that history is often written by those who hold power, but truth is found in many voices, the forgotten, the silenced, the resilient. Listening to these stories broadens understanding and nurtures empathy, essential threads in the fabric of a just society. As you stand poised to rejoin your time, carry with you the wisdom of these echoes. Let them guide your steps, inform your decisions, and inspire your actions. For in the end, it is through our collective stories, woven together, that history continues, alive, vibrant, and full of possibility. Stories shape us. They are the vessels carrying the wisdom, fears, dreams, and lessons of countless generations. From the flickering flames of ancient campfires to the glow of screens in modern homes, stories connect us across time and space, weaving the fabric of our shared humanity. You have traveled through eras marked by epic tales of gods and heroes, of kings and peasants, of conquests and revolutions. Each narrative carries more than facts. It carries meaning. It reveals how people understood their world and their place within it. But stories are not static relics. They evolve with each telling, shaped by those who share them and those who listen. They can inspire courage or spread fear, foster empathy or deepen division. In today's world, stories are more powerful than ever. They travel instantly, shaping opinions, influencing leaders, and mobilizing masses. Social media can amplify voices long unheard, shining light on injustice and sparking movements that cross continents. Yet, it can also distort truth, spread misinformation, and inflame conflicts. This power demands responsibility. To tell stories with honesty, to listen with openness, to seek understanding beyond our own experience. For when stories divide, they breed mistrust and hatred. When they unite, they build bridges strong enough to cross any chasm. History itself is a grand narrative, a mosaic of countless stories intertwined. The tales of the oppressed, the conquerors, the innovators, the forgotten, all contribute to the whole. Recognizing this complexity enriches our perspective and guides us toward compassion. As you prepare to return to your own time, consider the stories you carry. Whose voices will you amplify? Which truths will you seek? How will you shape the narratives that future generations inherit? The power of stories lies not just in their telling, but in the courage to live by their lessons, to embody the values they teach: justice, kindness, resilience. Because in the end, history is more than dates and events. It is the living story of humanity, written every day by every one of us. The tapestry of history stretches endlessly before you, a complex weave of light and shadow, triumph and tragedy, clarity and mystery. Throughout your journey, you have traced the footsteps of countless souls, each contributing threads to this vast fabric. Yet, the story is unfinished. It unfolds not just in dusty tomes, but in the heartbeat of the present, in the breath of every living being. Humanity's path has never been straight or simple. It twists with contradictions, progress shadowed by setbacks, enlightenment shadowed by ignorance. Empires rise, fueled by ambition and vision, only to crumble under the weight of hubris and conflict. Ideas that once seemed revolutionary become foundations for new challenges. But this unfolding story is not solely one of despair or doom. It is also one of hope, resilience, and renewal. You have seen how communities rebuild after devastation, how cultures blend and enrich one another, how knowledge grows through curiosity and courage. You have witnessed acts of kindness that change lives, revolutions that redefine freedom, and moments of clarity that alter the course of nations. Yet, the greatest question remains: what role will you play as the story continues? In a world connected like never before, where information flows instantaneously and cultures intertwine, individual choices carry profound weight. Every act of compassion, every step toward justice, every voice raised for truth adds to the collective momentum pushing humanity forward. But with this power comes responsibility. The future demands vigilance against complacency, courage against fear, and wisdom to navigate complexity. It calls for embracing diversity while seeking unity, honoring history while forging new paths. You stand at this crossroads, a guardian of the past and a pioneer of what is yet to come. The legacy you inherit is vast, but so is the potential you hold. Remember, history does not unfold without you. It is alive, breathing in your actions and intentions. It is shaped not only by great leaders and monumental events, but by countless small moments, unseen yet vital. As you awaken, carry this truth: the journey is unfinished, and the next chapters await your hand. Will you write them with courage, with compassion, with hope? The future is yours to shape. In your journey through time, one lesson stands clear: division has long been humanity's greatest challenge. From kingdoms torn by war to societies fractured by fear and misunderstanding, the chasms between peoples, beliefs, and ideals have shaped much of history's turmoil. Yet, alongside conflict, There has always been a persistent striving to bridge these divides through dialogue, empathy, and shared purpose. The Renaissance rekindled the flames of knowledge and cultural exchange. The Enlightenment challenged dogma and championed reason. Movements for civil rights and peace sought to heal wounds inflicted by centuries of prejudice and oppression. Today, the world is more connected than ever, yet paradoxically, also more fragmented. Borders may be crossed with ease, but walls of mistrust and misinformation grow higher. The speed of communication outpaces understanding, and empathy sometimes struggles to keep pace. But history shows that bridges can be built, sometimes where least expected. When people listen to one another's stories, fears give way to compassion. When communities work together, they forge resilience. When leaders embrace inclusion over exclusion, societies thrive. Your place in this ongoing effort is vital. Every act of kindness, every effort to understand different perspectives, every stand against injustice contributes to weaving the threads of connection. It is easy to feel overwhelmed by the scale of division, but remember, even the smallest bridge can span a great chasm. Change often begins with a single conversation, a simple gesture, a moment of courage. As you return to your time, carry with you the spirit of bridge building. Seek to understand before judging, to unite before dividing, to heal before harming. Because the future depends not just on technology or power, but on the willingness to connect, to see each other as fellow travelers on this shared journey. History teaches us that unity is possible. It begins with you. Every ending carries within it the seeds of a new beginning. As you near the close of your journey through time, consider the legacy humanity holds, fragile, yet brimming with potential. The choices made today will echo far into the future, shaping the world that generations yet unborn will inherit. Throughout history, change has often seemed slow, even imperceptible. But it gathers momentum, like a single drop of water carving a canyon over centuries. Movements for justice, peace, and sustainability start as whispers, growing louder until they can no longer be ignored. Science and technology accelerate progress, yet demand wisdom and humility to guide their use. You have seen empires rise and fall, revolutions ignite and subside, cultures clash and blend. The path is neither straight nor certain. It winds through light and shadow, hope and despair. Yet, at its core, this path is defined by human choice. The willingness to dream of something better, the courage to stand against injustice, the compassion to care for others and the planet we share. Now, as you prepare to awaken in your own time, ask yourself, what seeds will you plant? How will you nurture them to grow? What future will your actions help create? Remember, you are part of an unbroken chain, a lineage of those who came before and those who will follow. Your story joins theirs in the tapestry of history. The river flows onward, carrying the promise of tomorrow. And it begins with the choices made today. You open your eyes. The world you know welcomes you back, familiar yet forever changed by the journey you've taken through time. Centuries of history, of triumphs and tragedies, of ideas born and battles fought, have woven themselves into the fabric of your understanding. You carry them now, not as distant stories, but as living truths. The past is no longer a mere shadow behind you. It is a foundation beneath your feet, and a beacon lighting the path ahead. You see that history is not a closed book but an ever-unfolding story, written by those who dare to dream, to challenge, to create. The weight of this knowledge is both a burden and a gift. It calls you to act, to live with intention, to speak with courage, to build with compassion. Every choice you make ripples outward, touching lives unseen, shaping futures unknown. You understand now that time is not a line, but a circle, connecting generations past, present, and future. The legacy of those who came before is entrusted to you, and through your actions, it will be carried forward. The world awaits your hand, not as a spectator but as a participant, a guardian, a creator. You are part of this vast, complex, beautiful story, humanity's unfinished symphony. So, as you rise from sleep and step into your day, remember, the past lies within you, the future depends on you, and the present is your moment to shine. History is alive. And so are you.